We've
about,
got 51?
yeah, we had about 20 people on that list who,
Do you have a sign-in sheet for
Mhm.
students? Yeah. So we only had about 8 the other day, right?
yeah, but a few of those on the original list got checked off because they put their name differently or something with Karina, like Katie Hyatt.
Hate it?
Hate it.
Yeah.
And then there was one other one like that. So, and then there's 2 this morning there's actually 9 still floating out there, but 2 of them were the ones that couldn't come.
Okay, so what are we going to do about the 9?
I'll talk with Mark about it, see what he wants to do. There's one of them. I know.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am
There.
Hi.
Huh? Do you feel like you're back in class? That means that you can ask questions, right?
I hope so. That was a hate to ask questions.
Huh?
I said that was a hate to have her ask questions.
I think you all should ask questions.
Oh, of course.
It's much better if it's interactive than a lecture. Hands cold? It's really cold outside. I'm not happy about this whole cold weather.
Absolutely not.
I do not like cold weather. I do not like snow. I do not like ice. I like it above 95 and about 90% humidity. That's my type of weather. Huh? Wrong state for sure. I'm sure I'm not from this area originally. No, I actually am, but I don't feel like it. I only feel good when I'm in Belize, in the middle of the jungle. That's where I feel good.
Too bad I go to work.
Should I hear all your students here that you know?
Yes.
They are? So who's going to Albuquerque?
Yeah.
Yeah, just these guys
Yeah.
over here?
Brock already came to the last one.
Right.
Alex and Steve.
Okay.
And then Rachel already went through it.
Exactly. She already went through it. So your kids are not here then, Brian?
Yeah, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 floating out there.
Do you guys have 9 o'clock classes?
Yes.
Okay, then we have to start. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. 'Cause this takes about a whole hour to go through, and we're already 5 minutes into that hour, so. I'm glad you're here. If you don't know me, I'm Mary Ann Studer. I'm the Dean of McMaster School for Advancing Humanity. And so that I have a little bit of credibility, in your eyes, I've traveled with probably close to 150 students over the last 14 years. And some of that international, a lot of it domestic. I've been to over 15 countries now with students, not just on my own. And I've gone through a whole host of trainings at the State Department for specifically how to travel with students and how to teach people how to travel with students, both domestically and internationally. You're here today because you may already know all this stuff. But what you're here today is for us to talk about it. Because the scariest thing to me is when somebody looks at me and says, I hope that never happens, because I don't know what I would do if it did. That's really scary. You have to have a plan. You have to think ahead what you're afraid is going to happen or what might happen, how you're going to handle it ahead of time. Even if you don't handle it that way when it actually happens, you have a plan in the back of your head, and that gives you a license to face something head on and not to think about it, and be so frantic about it that you panic. That's the problem. So these are some of the terms that I'm going to be using this morning. Safety, and I want you to be able to differentiate between the different terms. Safety is things that happen to you just because you live in the world. You know, sickness, natural disasters, something that causes you harm that's unintended and part of the natural world that you live in. Security is freedom from hostile acts. Now these two can also be, and I think most of them are, they're not personal. There's not a personal attack against you. It's just because someone needs something or wants something or wants to intimidate you. Note that harassment, intimidation, and discrimination can come within the groups that you travel with, not just on the outside. And your course of action for that is always to address it straight on with the person that's harassing you or intimidating you and say, I consider this harassment, stop it. And then right away you need to tell one of the trip leaders, okay? You always have to address it. Sometimes people say things and they don't realize that it's intimidating to you, or it feels like it's discriminatory to you. So you need to stop it right there and then report it to a trip leader. They know to act on that immediately. That is not something you ever fool around with. And so you should note some kind of immediate action as a response to that. Threats are anything that puts your safety or security into jeopardy. And risk is how you evaluate the probability that something's going to happen, and is it worth it? You know, that kind of risk management thing. What's your motivation for doing something, and is it worth it? I'll give you an example. I canceled a trip to Egypt that I was taking honor students on about, oh gosh, that's maybe been 4 years ago now, something like that. Had we been going for a different reason, I would have considered it differently. I don't know what the outcome would have been. But we were on an academic trip. There were some bombings in Egypt at the time that seemed to be targeted to academic groups, especially college groups. And so with that series of events happening leading up to when we were supposed to leave, that became not worth it, okay? So there's always a risk assessment that you have to do. Can you guys see this, or do I need to turn down lights even more? I'm a little afraid to turn down lights at 8 o'clock in the morning. You can see it? Okay. So what we're gonna do is, I have a friend in the State Department, his name is Ray Leckie, and Ray wrote a book called Travel Wise. And in that book, he does, there's an exercise where he calls on people to profile themselves personally. Now, you all know what profiling is, right? And it has a really bad rap. It's something that's not good. In this case, it's really good, because what you're going to do is you're going to look at yourself, and you're going to figure out how someone who intends to commit a crime might assess you. That tells you how much of a target you are, okay? So what I want you to do is look at, we don't have many choices, but look at the people around the room, everybody around the room, and pick out your target. Pick out your target. Okay? Steve, you got a target? Who would be your target in here? You're a criminal, you need things. Who's your target? I'm included in that too, so.
Oh, you.
Why would you pick me? I'm just telling you. Usually people pick me. Why would you pick me? I'd be so the wrong person for you to pick, just so you know. But why would you pick me?
Because I know I can outrun you.
You cannot, okay, and that's exactly one of the things that we're going to be looking at. You think you can outrun me, okay?
I'm pretty sure. I hope so.
Well, you probably can. We don't know. We don't know. I actually would probably pick Natalie. And I would pick you because you have nice jewelry. And I would pick you because I probably could sit in a nice purse. I could probably steal $300, $400, $500 from you, and you probably have enough resources that you wouldn't care to chase me. I mean, I'm just going by, and that's what you do. I did this exercise with students in the fall, and how many people know Mike Suzo? He was shocked that I would pick him. And he was my target because, for the very same reason, this is a person that doesn't look like he's going to chase me and he can afford to lose a little bit of money. Now, that may or may not be the case, but when people go by how you dress, how you look, right, what you think their physical conditions are, this is what criminals are doing when they're looking for an easy target. Okay, criminals, either professional criminals, don't care anything about who you are, what your intentions are, and what you're doing on this initiative. All they care about is, can they easily get money from you and not get caught, right? Those are the good ones. The bad ones are either in jail or dead. So it's the good ones you have to worry about. And you have to be able to consider yourself in that regard, because if you don't, then you're not assessing yourself appropriately and protecting yourself appropriately. Some things about yourself you can change, and some you can't. Gender is one of those things you can't change. In some cultures, and this is not, I'm not being subjective here or stereotypical, gender is an empirical fact, right? More often than not, in the United States, they're going to pick a woman, right? In other cultures, that may not be the case. Being a woman may actually be an advantage. And in certain circumstances, being a woman is an advantage. They're not gonna pick you. If I'm gonna take a hostage, I'm gonna probably take a young male, somebody that's not gonna be a lot of trouble to me, right? If I wanna really get money and turn them over in good health. So I mean, I think it just depends on what the situation is. But I think from most pretents and purposes, you would agree that in this country, if you're a female, and you're on the streets, in an urban environment, per se, you're probably more of a target. Mobility issues, like you said, you thought you could outrun me. I think that's valid. Okay, that's what somebody's going to say. And age certainly makes a difference. My age probably works against me in that regard. How you carry yourself. This is really important, and this is something that you can change. On the street, I probably am not such a good target. I tend to walk very rapidly. I tend to walk with kind of an aggressive manner about me. And so that probably wards some people off. People, if you're on the street and see, this is part of the posture things too. I think that if you're on the street and you carry yourself like you don't know where you're going or what you're doing, then you're a target for sure. I worry about groups of students, especially groups in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 students when they travel, and that's what's going to be on the Philadelphia case. You tend to be in the middle of that group and surround yourself with people you know, and you really don't maintain situational awareness. You really are not, you're in your own little cluster. That's very dangerous. How good a shape you're in is another thing, and those you may or may not be things that you can change, but certainly your stature and your posture you can. You don't want to stand in the street corner all huddled over with a great big map open, right? That's a sure sign that things, I mean, you can look at maps. I don't think you should walk aimlessly and be lost for blocks and blocks, but do so in a different context. Step to the side, don't stand at the crosswalk, open the map, open it up when it's still folded, to get the section that you want. And check very quickly where you're going, or better yet, check before you ever leave anywhere. I think that's really important. Your health is a concern. When people travel, they tend to get a little stressed, especially you're exposed to a lot of extra germs that are not from where you're from, and that makes a difference, especially if you're flying. You can pick up a lot of germs from flying. That's not a good plan. So take vitamins, keep yourself well rested and well hydrated. You should also concentrate on taking and keeping any medical routines that you have in place. Taking medicine that you're already on at a certain time of the day, that sort of thing. Don't do anything to stress your body out any more than the traveling does, okay? Mobility we've already talked about. Vision is important because people don't use their peripheral vision very much. And peripheral vision contributes a lot to what your subconscious picks up. I'll give you an example. There's a book, and I think all of you should read it. We've got several copies in the master office that you can just check out for free. It's called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. And in the book, he gives you license and reason to trust your gut instincts, to trust that sixth sense that you might have, to pay attention when the hair on the back of your neck starts to rise, to really look at what your subconscious is processing and act on that quicker than you can rationalize your way out of it. Unfortunately, in our culture, generally speaking, males have been taught to reason that out, to not act on those gut feelings. That's a problem. I'll give you an example. What DeBecker does in the book is he talks to victims and he debriefs the victims to the point that they can understand where they picked up the clues. And one of the victims that he talked to, or near victim, was a woman who had pulled up to an ATM with her husband. And it was one of those, you have to get out and walk over to the ATMs. So he pulled up to the ATM, he left the car running, she's in the car, he goes out to the ATM. And all of a sudden, sitting in this car, she gets this sense that I've got to get out of here, like this overwhelming panic that she cannot explain. So good for her, she opens the door, she literally rolls out of the car as someone gets in the driver's seat and drives away. And when he debriefed her, what he found out was that in her peripheral vision, on the side mirror on the driver's side, she picked up a glimpse of denim, and her husband wasn't wearing denim. He didn't have jeans on. And so she actually saw the guy coming up beside, but her brain couldn't process it that fast. She went on her gut instincts, and it turned out to be the right thing to do. So, you have to trust those things. There's a whole series in there about the way that people talk to you and offer you help, and how to distinguish between whether their intentions are good or not good. That sort of thing. So you have to be really careful. It's a book that you should all read. Guaranteed you should all read it. And then you should give it to somebody else to read. Okay, now I'm going to go on my tirade about iPods. How many people wear earphones on a pretty regular basis? Okay, you're just not raising your hand. Or you're all really bright people. Okay, Steve. Earphones are dangerous. They're extremely dangerous when you're traveling. You don't want to walk down the streets with earphones on. You don't want to walk through airports with earphones on. You don't want to sit waiting for a plane with earphones on. I don't even like wearing earphones in a plane, but that's just me. And a lot of my students, I have found by traveling with them, sleep with earphones on to drown out the noises that they're not familiar with. This is really, really dangerous because you wouldn't think of traveling with a blindfold on, would you? That's taking away one of your senses. Taking away your hearing is also an important sense that you're taking away. The statistics show that out of the people who've been kidnapped, raped, murdered, assaulted, robbed while they were jogging, that over 75% of them were wearing earphones when somebody came up on them. It's a huge, huge... I've walked across campus and I watch. And I'll speak to people who are coming head on to me with their earphones in. And they don't respond. They don't even see me. And this is like, I'm not going to hurt them, but this is a real problem, and I think it's a real problem when you travel. In addition to the fact that you really don't want to take anything traveling, that you don't want to take anything that you care about losing. It puts another burden on you. iPods are easily stolen. I traveled with a student just recently who lost her iPod. She doesn't know whether it slipped out of her backpack in the plane. It's just a pain. So don't travel with anything that you really care about. That's important. Your behavior is another big consideration. And so we look at risk tolerance, and you can read those bullets there to see which one of those you fit in. The first bullet, if risk is just the reason you're living, that's what that means in French, then you either grow out of that or you don't live long. And people for whom risk is a personal challenge, that's usually not your group. Actually, and I'm telling this to Bryant for the second time, not because he's in that category, but you may be traveling with people in that category. It's usually a midlife crisis person. That I'm going to do this because I just can't, it's still at this age, and it's dangerous. People, the third bullet is my big one. Those who are cautious but can be talked into it. These are the people that they say, you know in your heart you shouldn't be doing whatever they want you to do, but all the cool kids are doing it, and they're doing something and they're surviving. You don't think that you should do it, but you do it anyway, and that's when it really gets dangerous, because you know yourself personally and what you're able to do and not do. Okay, and I know I have 4 kids of my own. They're grown up now. They'd be mad if I called them kids, but I always told them growing up that please, be careful about what you do. I just don't want your last words to be, hey, look at this. It's a pretty good rule, right? So think about that. People who are risk adverse and only take a risk if there's value, those are the kind of people that you want to travel with. Those are the kind of people you want to be, right? The last people, those who avoid all necessary risk, you can't be any of those people, because those people are home sitting on a couch somewhere. They don't go anywhere or do anything. So you got to put yourself out there and take a chance, right? For the learning opportunity that you're going to experience. Alcohol and drugs, I'm going to just, Ray Lucky says that if you impair your judgment with alcohol or drugs, if you get drunk in an environment that you're not accustomed to, you are a fool, period. End of sentence. And that's really all I have to say about it. Brian, you want to tell them the spiel for the Philadelphia trip?
Oh yeah, basically once you're in the hotel for the night, you're staying in the hotel. I'm not as familiar as Philadelphia as I would be other places, So if you're drunk somewhere and you call me and you're like, I'm at bar 21, I don't know where that is. And so I would have to Google it and then come find you and drag you back. So with that being said, we're not going to have any alcohol on the trip.
You want to talk about your trip, Ashton?
Same house. You'll be with me the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to
Here,
do
I
it.
thought we were gonna get drunk every night.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, that's one way to think about it, and certainly we don't want you to get drunk. But to be honest with you, I don't ever drink when I'm traveling with students. Not even a glass of, I wouldn't be drunk on a glass of wine, but not even a glass of wine, because I can't afford to even be slightly fuzzy. And so I think when you think about that, and you think of the responsibilities that you have on these initiatives as trip leaders, but you have responsibility for yourself as well, it really makes good sense not to drink. And I think that that's a good rule to follow. Both your personality and your cultural background will say something about how you deal with conflict. Knowing the type of person that you are and how you normally deal with conflict, and whether or not you need to alter that behavior when you're confronted in an environment you're not familiar with, is an important step that you need to take. So, I guess I have to pick on you. Tell me your first name. Okay. Would you duke it out with somebody who was trying to rob you? I picked on you because you're probably one of the biggest guys in the room, right? Or I could have picked on you. You're gonna try to hit somebody that robs you? Stand up for yourself?
Probably.
Yeah. This is what I'm trying to get you not to do. Okay? And I don't want you to do that because you have to think of the consequences, right? You have to think you have to think the whole scenario through. So somebody comes up and they want your money, and they're not as big as you guys are. So right away you think, I can take this guy, right? No.
You might have a gun.
Okay, so he has no gun.
Okay.
He has no gun, right? I can take this guy. Probably the first thing that's going through your head. So let's play out that scenario. So instead of giving the guy your money, you're going to start yelling at him. And in that process, it escalates. And say you come out on top. You deck the guy, he goes down. Right? Good job. Now we have to file a police report. The guy hit his head. He's probably going to sue you. You're probably going to pay for him the rest, for a long time because he won't be able to work. He's wrenched his back or something in the process. The whole trip has to stop because, of course, you got to call in Brian, and Brian's got to go to the police station. And so anything that the group was going to do that afternoon is probably on hold because you got to have witnesses and the whole thing. Or you could have given the guy $20, and it would have been fine. You got to think about it. And you have to give people money in a very particular way. First of all, you never carry all your money in the same place. Don't put it in a purse. Have money in different pockets in your jackets or your coats. I always keep some money in an outside pocket. Or, in an accessible place. Outside of a purse or an outside pocket. For me personally, it's usually about $30. I usually do a 20 and about 5 ones and a 5 stuck in there. So it's like a wad. And I put the 20 on the outside. For you guys, I don't know what it's going to be. If somebody comes up to rob me, I'm going to say, okay, this is what I got. This is all I have. And I'm going to take that money. If this is the person that's asking me for the money, and they're kind of close on me, I'm going to take that money and I'm going to go like this. And I'm going to apologize for throwing it away from them at the same time. I'm going to say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to throw it at you. I'm just so nervous. They're going to reach for the money because that's what they want anyhow. And as they go that direction, I'm going that direction. Which gets that distance between me and them. They've got no more, they either take the money or they chase me, not knowing whether I have any more or not, right? And so that's going to get you out of the close proximity of who's ever perpetrating on you, okay? And I think that that's really important for you to understand. Think about what's worth it or not. I always tell my students, carry a wad of Kleenex tissue in your back pocket, rolled up so it looks like money, and then just see how many times you get pickpocketed. You'd be surprised. I've had students get pickpocketed all over. With money in their back pockets. Do not carry your billfolds back here. Never use a backpack when you're traveling. Keep everything in close proximity and in several different locations, okay? And remember above all else that your pride's not worth it, money's not worth it, things that you have are not worth it. Who cares whether you can take the guy or not? It doesn't matter. Get out of it with the least amount of damage to you, okay? I have automobiles on there not because anybody's going to be driving, but I really worry about pedestrian accidents. It's one of the most important things that you have to worry about when you're traveling, and simply because you're traveling in those groups and you're not really paying attention and the group starts to go across the street and you're really the last person, or you look around and they're halfway across the street and you run out. You know, there's a lot of one-way streets in Philly, and so be careful. You're just not used to the area here. And if you don't know this, there's like a crossing street culture everywhere. Ashton knows it, I know for sure. Some places, if you look the driver in the eye as you're crossing the street, they'll stop. Other places, they'll run you down. You know, it just depends on where you're at, and you don't know that culture yet. I was just in Boston recently with students. We couldn't figure it out. Everybody walked when the do not walk signs were on, until we asked somebody. They said, well, in Boston, if you hit a pedestrian, you're going to jail. So literally, you could walk across anywhere in the street, no matter what the lights were, and everybody would stop for you. It was the weirdest thing ever. It was crazy. Not so in Defiance, for sure. You have to think about why you're traveling. Your motivation for traveling is important, and you have to be able to assess when you travel whether this was a good experience for you or not. This is a personal thing. Some people just don't do well traveling, and so think about this. This is your opportunity to kind of explore that option. It's going to affect how you behave on the trip, and how little glitches on the trip either slow you down or are just nothing in your way. The people who find that they don't like traveling, and they really are completely uncomfortable, those are the people that are going to drive Ashton and Brian crazy. Because they're not going to be happy with the food, they're not going to be happy the day it rains, they're not going to be happy that you have to walk so much, they're not going to be happy on how long it takes to get there. All those things are going to be a trial, and you're going to hear about it. And you're going to hear about that from other students too. Those are the people that just shouldn't probably be traveling, okay? And so you don't have to let them affect you. Know what you need financially. This is important that you feel financially comfortable on the trip. That you know that, you know, how many days you're going to be gone, how much the food costs where you're going if you have to pay for food, and how to access funds is really important. I've gone with students before, you have a group of 15 students and somebody needs an ATM. So all 15 of you go to the ATM, right? And they use the ATM, and then literally 2 hours later, somebody's out of money and they need an ATM. And then you all 15 have to go to the ATM again. Try to avoid that kind of scenario and use ATMs that are attached to banks only. There's something called a scrubber that can be placed on the outside of an ATM slot. You can put your card in. The scrubber picks up your card number, your PIN number, the security code on the card, your signature on the back, and then it spits your card out, you get your money, you never know. And somebody comes along and picks up their scrubber, and all your information's on it. So use ATMs that are attached to banks, and then watch your bills when they come back. Know exactly what you spent, keep the receipts for it, what money you withdrew, things like that, so that you're able to track that when you come back. And watch it carefully. Some people don't want to look at their ATM, or don't want to look at their bank account when they get back, because they spend too much, but don't be one of those people. Have a communication plan in place. Make sure that people in your group have all your cell phone numbers. Make sure your cell phone number is charged, or your cell phone is charged. That's really important. Many groups will break into smaller pieces where you have a buddy. You should always have a buddy. And the rules for dealing with when you get separated from your buddy are very clear. You should be headed back, and I confirmed this with Brian in the last class. He's going to expect to find you in the lobby. If you are a single person, for some reason, you ended up either separated from the group, the first thing everybody's going to do is they're going to go back to the lobby, and I always tell my students they better beat me back there, because I'm going to be stressed. You don't want me stressed. So You need to be in the lobby, hands down. You don't go looking for people where they said they were gonna go or anything else. You go right back to the lobby. And then he's gonna have alternate locations for if for some reason the hotel is a problem, which can happen. And so you need to have another location other than the hotel. You should know the itinerary and you should stick to that itinerary as much as possible. You really, really need to have all your travel paperwork filled out. Brian is collecting it for his groups. And make sure that when you put emergency numbers on those forms, that they are in fact your emergency numbers. I had to use an emergency number one time, and I called and there was no answer. And it was an international trip, and so I called a home number and finally got somebody at a home number that I had them look up here. Come to find out, the cell number that the student had put down was for the cell phone that they were carrying that was turned off when they went overseas. So please make sure you have the right phone numbers down. That's really important. Urban settings are more dangerous, and that's why we do this, because many of our students have not grown up in an urban environment. And they're more dangerous because you get a congregation of people in urban settings that are relying on work. And so when the unemployment rate goes up, so does the crime rate. People have come to the city and now they feel really displaced, often from the network of family and friends and things that they had to access when they were in a more rural setting. So there's much higher risk. This is an example of I did this for the Pittsburgh, for people going to Pittsburgh, to let people know that in an urban environment, neighborhoods change very quickly. And so you can really have dinner in this, have the best dinner of your life right there at a restaurant in this low crime area, and simply walk out of the front of the restaurant and go across the street and it's a high crime area. You don't know Philadelphia, you don't know Albuquerque. And so there was a student in the last session that we did last week who had been in Philadelphia in the summer and got in the wrong neighborhood. And he said, Philadelphia is like awful. And I said, what do you mean Philadelphia is awful? Well, he had just gotten himself where he didn't know where he was. And so this can happen. So listen to Brian. He's got everything worked out for Philadelphia. Albuquerque, you're going to run into the same thing, but you're going to be in a conference, so it's a little bit different. They'll give you lots of understandings. Go to the hotel concierge and say, where's the closest restaurant to walk to? Is it safe for me to be in that neighborhood to walk? And they'll tell you. They don't want to send you someplace where you're not going to come back. Okay? So it's really critical that you understand that it's just because you're in one place, you're totally not from the neighborhood here. And that makes all the difference in the world. Experience is one thing. Some of you have had international experience, some of you have traveled to other urban areas. It can work in your favor. It can also work against you. So you need to recognize that if you've traveled with groups before, that you may have been in a very protected environment. I know when I take students to Belize, I've turned around and taken them to Denver. It's been a completely different story. Just because they functioned well in Belize, and that's an international site, they were in a protected environment, much more protected than they would be on the streets of Denver. So, understand the situation you're in and assess, how your experience helps. So, how many people have been a victim or near victim of an assault or a crime of some sort? So we don't have to talk about that so much here, but you need to think about the people that you're with, and it's very difficult to know how you might react in a situation. And I'm going to give you an example, but you need to figure out. You need to be so aware of everything that's happening around you. And you need to be aware of how you personally feel about what's happening around you. And that's so true in the United States. I recently, this was a couple of years ago actually now, probably a year and a half to 2 years ago, I had to go to Washington, D.C. And I was attending a training at the State Department. And I needed to find a hotel that was in close proximity to where the bus goes out to the State Department. And it was at the Roslyn Metro Station. And so I have a son that lives outside of D.C. about 45 minutes, but I was going to stay in town for the 2 days that I was at the training and go visit him on the weekend. And so I had gotten a hotel, and most of Washington was booked. Like, I had a really hard time finding a hotel, and finding one in the correct price range was also important. But I did actually find a Best Western that was within walking distance of the Roslyn Metro Station. So I thought, good, I'm all set. I fly into DC, I get in about 8:30 at night, and I go to get a cab, and I get in the cab and I said, you know, I'm going to the Best Western near Rosslyn Metro Station. And the cab driver looked at me and he goes, I don't think I know where that's at. And I said, okay, because, you know, cab drivers can be new, right? And so I gave him the address and he said, yeah, I think maybe I do know where that's at. So, fine, he takes me, I wasn't really worried about that. Takes me down to the Rosslyn Metro Station and finds this Best Western, which turns out in downtown DC to be a motel, not a hotel, which I was shocked by, because I didn't think there was any motels in downtown DC where you could drive a car up. That's the difference, right? You can drive a car up to an outside door. Not the best place for me to be staying, but it's only for a couple nights. It's in downtown DC. You know, what can go wrong? And it really was steps away from the Iwo Jima Memorial. So, you know, I've been in this area before. I kind of know the neighborhood a little bit. So he lets me off, and I walk into a lobby which is probably about as big as this room. Not the best ever, but it kind of bothered me that there were two couches facing each other in this lobby, and they had people on them. Now, it's not unusual to find people in the lobby of a hotel if there's a fountain, or they're waiting for a cab, or there's a coffee machine, or there's a little bar, or something. But these people had no reason to be in a room this size looking at each other across these couches that I could see, you know. So I went up to the desk, and there was a gentleman ahead of me at the desk who was arguing with the desk clerk about changing his room. He wanted to change his room. And the desk clerk said, nope, haven't got any more rooms. All of DC is booked. It's this room or no room. So the guy walks away in a fury. And I thought, boy, that wasn't very nice. And I go up and I give the guy my name. I have a reservation, I'm checking in. The desk clerk announces my name to the whole lobby, which I thought was kind of odd. Usually they never repeat your name like that. And so that made me a little nervous. And then he says to me, okay, I'm checking, I got your reservation here. I need your cell phone number. And I said, well, what do you need my cell phone number for? And he said, well, I just need it. I just need it in case you know we need to get a hold of you. And I said, well, why would you want to get a hold of me? And he said, well, you know, in case we need to get a hold of you for something. And I said, well, is there not a phone in the room? And he goes, no, there's a phone in the room. And I said, then why would you need my cell number? Well, you know, just in case you're not in the room. And I said, okay, so why would you have to call me if I'm not in my room? And he said, well, you know, just in case something happens, like, you know, what if there's a fire or whatever. I said, do you have fires here often? Because I'd really like to know before I check in. And he said, no, we've never had a fire here. So then he kind of drops it. And I know that he had already checked me in, because this is like, again, a really small place, and I see my sheet come out of the printer that you have to sign, you know. But he still has his hands on the computer keyboard. And he said, so I need some more information. He said, do you have a vehicle or are you traveling alone? Two completely unrelated questions. And so in that process, I said, no, I don't have a vehicle, and no, I'm not alone. And he said, well, you know, it's still not letting me check you in without your cell phone number. And I said, then you've got a real problem, make one up. Because I said, I'm not giving you my cell number. And he gets infuriated with me, and he finally says, okay, well, here's your room. And he hands me the room key, but announces my room number to the lobby. So now the people in the lobby have my name and the room number, which I'm disturbed about. That's happened to me before. It happened to me once at a Hyatt I was staying at. And I gave them the room key back and said, please give me another room that you haven't announced to the lobby. And they said, oh, I'm so sorry. And they gave me another room. They write the room number on the key card thing and hand it to you. And it was fine. I knew this guy had no more rooms. So I'm pretty much stuck. And so he finally gets exasperated with me, gets the sheet, and go ahead, and he signs it off. And says, says, okay, go ahead, you can go to your room. Well, I went up to my room. It was on the second floor of this little motel. And I walk in, and the room's clean, and I'm trying to calm myself down because I'm really feeling uncomfortable, but I'm trying to talk myself out of it. You know, you're just used to nicer places. You've traveled so much before, you're going to be fine. Until I looked around and saw that the door had no deadbolt, no bar, no chain. And I'm thinking, this is not good. So I call my son, have my son come get me. Gotta come get me. He goes, yeah, you need to get out of there like as quickly as you can. He said, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know. I'll think of something. and I'll get in a cab, and I'll call you when I get in the cab, and we'll meet halfway. So now it's going on 10 something, right? So I feel bad I've gotten him out of bed. And I go down to the lobby, not having any clue as to how I'm going to get out of staying in this room and not alerting them that I know something's wrong. So I walk into the lobby and I fake an asthma attack, and I've never had asthma in my life. I don't even know anybody that has asthma, so I have no idea if I did a good job or not. But I did a good enough job to get them to call me a cab to take me to an emergency room real quickly. And the guy is yelling at me as I go out the door that I have to pay for the room. I told him that there was something in the room that was cleaned with that I'm allergic to, and that's where I was having an asthma attack. And I said, just give me the manager's card, I'll call him tomorrow. So I got my cab, got out of there, felt really bad about getting my son out of bed, go to the State Department the next morning for my training, and a friend of mine who was doing the training was telling about, he was doing his opening little spiel to the group, and he said, you know, I know you think you're here to find out about traveling with students internationally and how to do that safely. He said, I'm here to tell you that I'm going to tell you things that will pertain to the United States, not just international travel. And he said, just last week at the Roslyn Metro Station, he said, the Best Western at the Roslyn Metro Station, 2 women were robbed and raped. And he said, the guys are still on the loose. So to make a long story short, at the break, I told him about my experience, told him where I was the night before. And we gave some information to the DC police, and it was an inside job. The guy behind the desk was part of this thing. I'd have been the next hit, for sure. So the point of the story is not to tell you that I was smart. The point of the story is to tell you that you've got to trust your gut instincts, and most of the time you don't get validation. That's proof that I would have never known that had he not opened his session that way. So it's very important that you understand that when you make a decision, you may always question it in the back of your head, but if nothing will happen. And so you never get that kind of feedback. I want you to know that you need to trust your gut instincts. That's really, really important. You need to have a plan of action. Self-defense means you can run away. That's what I think is really important. And you need to get off of the X is what people say. Getting off of the X means that if you hear people shouting at each other, if you hear a pop, 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 it could be gunfire. How many people have ever heard gunfire before in the room? Good. It sounds like, if it's at a distance, it sounds like pop, 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 pop. If you hear an explosion, if you even hear of an accident, if you see a protest, those are all potential dangerous situations, breaking of glass, anything like that. You need to move yourself away from that as quickly as possible. Don't go toward it. It's not worth your time. Okay? And have multiple plans of action. The more you've practiced that, the better off you're going to be. People think that I'm a little crazy when it comes to safety, but how many people came here in a car this morning? Did you put a seatbelt on?
Yes.
Okay, so you're concerned about safety too. When was the last time you stuck a fork in a toaster? Don't do that either, do you? So you're thinking about safety all the time. We just have to get you to think about safety in a travel sense, right? You should constantly think of what-if scenarios. And your responsibility for yourself is of critical importance, okay? So now I'm going to ask you to do something really silly, but it's not silly. I need you to repeat after me, and I need you to insert your name where I put my name, okay? Are you ready? And I want to hear all of you because there's not many of you here, okay? Nobody loves Mary Ann more than Mary Ann does. And it sounds silly. That's really true. It's very, very true. And it's important because your instincts to protect yourself, no matter how much I care about you as my students, and I really do care about my students when I travel with them. You get very attached. I care about you deeply. I can't protect you as much as your instincts help you to protect yourself. And that's of critical importance. You cannot say, oh, you know, Ashton's going on this trip, she'll watch over us. It doesn't work that way. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to eat right, you've got to watch where you're walking, you've got to have a situational awareness around you. That is your responsibility. And the better you are at that, the safer everybody in your group will be. This is not like every man for themselves. This is strictly, you have an instinct to survive. Kick that into gear for us. recognize it and kick it into gear. It's really important. Hostile acts are not directed toward you as a person, right? And I always tell this and people laugh, but it's true. I had an aunt who always parked in no parking zones when she was going to a funeral because she was sure God wouldn't let her get a ticket if she was visiting the dead. And so she got tickets over and over again, but that's the kind of mentality. You're good people. Our students are good people. Many times you're traveling, either, if not on this initiative, other initiatives you're traveling on to do good things. That does nothing to protect you against somebody who wants to perpetrate violence against you. It's not personal. You are a target. Think of yourself that way. Think of yourself as a target. And my students have coined this as spidey sense. Pay attention to that sense that you have. A lot of times when you're in a group and somebody's talking to you, pointing out a piece of architecture or something that you should be looking at, you know, the whole periphery of the group is at risk. Someone will join that group. This happens all the time when we're in Europe touring. Somebody will join the group. That's when they're going to pickpocket you, right? When your attention is being drawn to something else. It's okay to see things around you. In fact, when you pay attention to things around you to improve your situational awareness, you actually see more. Look at the person who's walking toward you on the street. Look them in the eye. Let them know that you're not afraid to do that. Watch every doorway. Watch when you're coming to an intersection. All that kind of stuff is going to help you see the things around you and not just let them blur by. And that's the danger, especially when you travel in groups. That's a real danger. Don't take anything with you that you don't need, and distribute anything that's valuable. I don't wear a lot of jewelry, period. Some people say, well, all my jewelry is costume jewelry that I take on trips. I don't wear any of the good stuff. You know what? A criminal's not going to know until they take it to the pawn shop. So don't wear, I wear very small earrings. I don't wear any other kind of jewelry. I take off all my wedding ring. I take all that kind of stuff. I don't travel with that stuff. It's not good practice. I have to talk about fire because fire moves rapidly, more rapidly than you would ever imagine. I have seen the video of that nightclub fire that happened, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I've seen it 3 times. It almost makes me sick every time I see it. It's probably one of the things that's hardest for me to watch. And people were in a nightclub. They had pyrotechnics on the stage. I don't know if you remember this or not. And people just couldn't get out. You need to know where the exits are every place you're at. Every theater, if you go to an orchestra performance, if you're at a sporting event, you need to know where the exits are. And you need to make that a habit of yours, to always know multiple directions out of any given place. That's going to save you. When you're in a hotel, fortunately in the U.S., our hotels we actually have building codes and standards, and there's sprinkler systems and things like that. You still have to protect yourself. And the way that you're going to do this is I'm going to give you step by step what you need to do. When you go in your hotel room, I want you to go all the way in, drop off your luggage, and I want you to come to the doorway and be like you're going to walk out of the door. At that point that you're standing in the doorway, I want you to look and see which direction the exits are, the stairway is. Then I want you to actually physically head in that direction, dragging your hand along the wall. I want you to count the number of doors, because you aren't going to be able to see in a hotel fire. It's going to be loaded with smoke. You should know if there's a fire extinguisher, you want to be able to grab it, right? And so where that's at. But you're going to drag your hand all the way along, counting the doorways, and I want you physically to do it, not just go 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4 doorways, I'm good, okay? I want you to drag your hand along because I want you to feel it when you're not panicked. Okay, I want you to feel what it feels like. And I want you to go to the stairwell door, and I want you to open the door. That's critical. And it's critical because I forget what my percentage is now. It's got to be close to 50%. It was as high as 65 at one time. At least 50% of the time that I've traveled, or on average 50% of the time, those stairwells are locked. Those doors are locked. And they're locked because if you're in a hotel in an urban area where the neighborhood around the hotel is not real good, a lot of times people will come and try to sleep in those stairwells. And they don't want them getting up on the floor, so they lock the doors. If the door is locked, you need to go back to your room, call the front desk, and tell them that you want the door opened, and give them 15 minutes to open it. If they don't, tell them you want a room on the first floor, bottom line. And they'll either open it or they'll move you. I've had a hotel move me once, because they said it's their policy not to leave those open, and that they open automatically when the fire detectors go off. I wasn't buying it. My door probably wouldn't be the one to open. And you're really stuck then on that floor. So you have to understand that. You have to really physically do that. If you try to look when you open your door, and you think, oh yeah, the stairway's down there, that's what she said I have to do, I'm fine. And you go in the door, you know, you're never gonna remember whether it's left or right when you were coming out. You're gonna say, now did I look at it going in, and which, you know, and that's gonna get all turned around in your head. Only look for the stairwell when you're facing outside your door. Wrap a towel around and over your face if you have to, and crawl as low to the ground as you can. Really important. Fire safety is a huge, huge thing. I had a fire alarm. I gave this presentation at a conference once. Went up to my room to change clothes, and the fire alarm went off. And I was on like the 14th floor. So, okay. I go and I start moving toward the stairwell. You know, there was no smoke or anything. People are coming out of their rooms going, I think it's just a drill. They go back in their rooms. They go, are you kidding me? I walked all the way down. Some people walked all the way down. We went outside the whole show. They were still checking people into the hotel. Finally, somebody from the hotel came out and said, yeah, it was just a drill. It was no big deal. No, it went off again. When I got up to the 14th floor, walked all the way down again and went out. I found out the next day there was an electrical fire in the basement. They were still checking people in the hotel at the time. And it was a very famous hotel chain. Very good hotel chain. You should know your medical insurance. You should know what choices you have if you're injured, as far as going to an emergency room. I know that the trip leaders take down all this information, but it's your responsibility, okay? Totally your responsibility. Think carefully why you were going. Have your motivation and your goals for going clear. If you're going to have a good time and get away from here, and that's your main reason for going, rather than learning something, yeah, you're gonna have a hard time resisting the alcohol, probably. You know, think about why you're going. Why specifically are you going? Your motivation and how well you have that defined and how well it matches the goals and mission of the trip is going to gauge your success. And it should be clear enough for you to weigh any risks that pose themselves in your way. So I'm good. I got done like in 5 minutes early. Questions? Anybody has? Ashton has none, right? That's all right. That's truly okay. All righty. Thanks a bunch.
We already just writing on this one because we already have a.
Oh yeah.
You guys feel ready now?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
How's it going?
Brian, I have a problem.
What's your problem?
I have workouts from 3:30 to 4:30.
Oh, for
Hello.
oh for
The thing.
it's at 5, right?
It's at 4.
Okay.
We can
That's
change it to 5 if you want.
No, just drop by my office and because I've been going over that information to a few individuals. So
Okay, perfect.
great.
And she said that she
Did it?
did it, but we went through all these sheets from like the previous ones and made it
I know Janelle had a question. I said go down and she went through. I guess she was going through a trip. She went through, and so she went through all the stuff, but then they never went going.
I'll look here and
And the rest of them, I don't know. The lower two players, they had and then so they'll eventually have to come in person, but this will hold up the work.
We're both like